All right. Hey, everybody. Thanks for coming. I'm Art Capozzis. I'm sort of volunteered to help Mark out to kind of come on up to Connecticut and have some fun with you all today. We have lovely fluoride-laced water provided by the management back there if you guys get thirsty. So I'm going to be pretty quick. You all already know this stuff for the most part. This is just like a little current events. Hey, why are we here? Kind of recap on how life's going out there. So I have a little screen here to start it off, pattern recognition. It's a focal point of the work of guys like Mark and Michael Tazarian, and obviously a big part of that is left brain, right brain balance, and Mark's going to get into all that today. But I found a picture that I thought was kind of interesting. There's our lovely friends at the Federal Reserve with that lovely building, that wonderful warm building that really makes you want to come in and give people hugs, doesn't it? Look at that. And then on the right, we have the new Reichschancellery in 1939, both of which feature eagles and podiums that look extraordinarily similar. I think we're going to be making some more connections between Nazis and America today before we're done. So hold on to your hat. Gary, hold on to your hat. All right. And by the way, the eagle is the sign of Scorpio, at least according to Michael Tazarian, which rules money and power. And, we get a lot of that between Rome and the Vatican and the Nazis and in the United States. That's a key piece of heraldry. We're all used to seeing that eagle, aren't we? But we need to see it within the right context and within an open mind. Don't bite down too hard on anything I have to say. Certainly don't just believe a word I say. Hopefully you guys can take some time and do some research into things. And obviously, if you're already here, then you're probably already doing that. But anyway, thanks again for coming. So Manly P. Hall, somebody that a lot of you are probably familiar with, wrote a book called The Secret Teachings of All Ages, and I think he kind of summed up a lot of the reason why we're here today in the first two paragraphs, in great part. This is a really long book. This thing is, I don't know, Mark, what do you think? It's like 500 pages or 400 pages. And it goes through basically the Freemasonic belief system, and this guy, Manly, is a great scholar and somebody who's written a lot about that knowledge base or that belief system. So I'm going to read this for you, so don't worry about trying to do it yourself. When confronted with a problem involving the use of reasoning faculties, individuals of strong intellect keep their poise and seek to reach a solution by obtaining facts bearing upon the question. Those of immature mentality, on the other hand, when similarly confronted, are overwhelmed. While the former may be qualified to solve the riddle of their own destiny, the latter must be led like a flock of sheep and taught in simple language. They depend almost entirely upon the ministrations of the shepherd. The Apostle Paul said that these little ones must be fed with milk, but that meat is the food of strong men. Thoughtlessness is synonymous with childishness, while thoughtfulness is symbolic of maturity. So, are we thinking these days? Because you have a PhD, are you thinking? What's going on around you? What's the thought process behind this? Let's keep going. There are, however, but few mature minds in the world, and thus it was that the philosophic religious doctrines of the pagans were divided to meet the needs of the two fundamental groups of human intellect, one philosophic, the other incapable of appreciating the deeper mysteries of life. To the discerning few were revealed the esoteric or spiritual teachings, while the unqualified many received only the literal or exoteric interpretations. In order to make simple the great truths of nature and the abstract principles of natural law, the vital forces of the universe were personified, becoming the gods and goddesses of the ancient myths, while the ignorant multitudes brought their offerings to the altar of Priapus and Pan, deities representing the procreative energies. The wise recognized in these marble statues only symbolic concretions of great abstract truths. So it seems to be that the prevailing thought process among the Freemasons is that there is going to be an initiated or a high priest class, and then there's going to be everybody else. And I think the question is, what do they know and what could they share with us? And bearing also in mind that this is a concept that goes back, like, as you can tell by the use of language here, thousands of years. So you've got the Bacchic tradition. Give me a couple more, Mark. The Druids. They've all got this structure where you've got the masses, then you've got the initiate, and then you've got the chance to get up to the highest level. But ultimately, that's a pyramid structure, right? Yeah. And that doesn't mean it's evil either. It could be good or bad. Matter of fact, under the right circumstances, if there's a big trauma in the society, earthquake, you need to have the most poised people protecting knowledge and truthful propositions. But it can be used against us real easily, right? So just switching gears a little bit, consensus trance and cognitive dissonance. These are the two big things we're worrying about these days, I think. With consensus trance, we have Charles Tart, who is ultimately relaying an ancient problem, like all our philosophers today, or over the last century, and all our psychologists over the last century, have wrestled with this issue of what is it that drives the consensus? Why is it that everybody thinks the same way about stuff? When in fact, so many of them, as intelligent as they are, aren't really taking responsibility to study the facts. In other words, if it happens on TV, they say it happened on TV, but it didn't really happen, it happened. That's right. So how'd that happen? Right? Well, you don't understand. You don't understand scientific method. Or it's like, no, mate. You're a PhD and you never read the 9/11 Commission report and you're going to stick scientific method in my face? No, you're not. Sorry. And I get that from multiple PhDs. And of course, cognitive dissonance, just to remind you guys what that is. Basically, it's holding contradictory propositions simultaneously, right? So let's see what other people have had to, think about when they're wrestling with this. Waking up from the trance, this is Yuri Lina from his book, Architects of Deception. Waking up from the trance is a difficult and laborious process. Certain key facts are necessary in order to achieve this, facts which the reader, despite all the lies, can recognize and has the possibility to verify. Here is a classic example from Darwin's journals. The Patagonians, a tribal people in South Argentina, could not see Darwin's ship, the Beagle, conceptually or even optically, since no large ships had hitherto been a part of their experience. Only the shaman of the tribe could see the ship. When the shaman began to describe the ship with the aid of objects known to the Patagonians, the ship became visible to all. Case in point. Oh, look. Hey. In Boston has been pummeled with chemtrails. Pummeled for the last 2 years. All right. This summer, 5-6 days a week. Some of them as bad as this. Right? I'm walking around, I'm like, am I nuts? But that's just it. The closer you look at a truthful proposition in a world based on lies, the more you'll start questioning your own sanity. So my parents' house is behind here, and I took a picture with the cell phone, obviously. Right? If you can't see it, I guess I'll just jump up real quick. They're running this pattern over here. See the thin one? Yeah. And then the prevailing wind just took it all the way across. That took half an hour. These aren't contrails. And come on, this thing was up here 25, 30 minutes, and it gets wider. But you got all these smart computer science people in Boston walking around like this. Gary, check it out. Walking around. Now Larry's like, Art, you're crazy. No, he's not. I got friends who drove down. So. Anyway, and I was in Florence, and they were crushing Florence this summer, crushing it. I was there for 4 nights. It was one nasty day of it. The other 3, there was nothing. I don't know. I'm not gonna, this isn't a chemtrail presentation, but, I think the point's made relative to consensus trance. Everybody should check this movie out. This is, It's a Wonderful Life. It's actually on YouTube right now. You've got to see this movie. Check it out for free on YouTube. Anybody here not see it? It's a Wonderful Life? All right, so most people, Gary, yeah, you got to check it out. So most of you have seen it. Anybody see it in the last 5 years? Okay, so it's been a while for a lot of people. Check it out again. That guy right there, you think he looks a little like J.P. Morgan? He sounded like him. He looked like him. His name was Potter. The name Morgan is M-O-R-G-A-N, 6 letters. P-O-T-T-E-R, 6 letters. Syllable, Potter. Syllable, Morgan, right? Capra's like, hey, look over here, through symbols, through, allegory. And there you go, right? We know what happened here. Everything was holding, Jimmy Stewart's character with his building and loan was holding the line hard, trying to keep it together, right? But of course, Potter managed to pull it off and pull the rug out from under him, right? And what happened? You guys remember Pottersville? What's America look like today? Does it look more like Pottersville, right? It's all in our faces. Then you got that skull on the desk, if you can see that. It's a little bit, it's underneath Jimmy's right hand there. And you got Napoleon in the back, who according to Dr. John Coleman was a Rothschild asset. You could read The Rothschild Dynasty by John Coleman, Dr. John Coleman, if you want a little bit of background on that. Of course, you have to do a study and pay attention and not just believe what I'm saying or even what Coleman says, but in his view, Napoleon was an asset of the Rothschilds, along with a bunch of other key people in Europe in the 19th century. So anyway, here you are. Russell Trust, Skull and Bones, right down the road, Morgan, Yale, no doubt. John Perkins, all right, let's talk some more about money. He wrote a book called Confessions of an Economic Hitman. I'm sure most of you have heard of it. First, I was to justify huge international loans that would funnel money back to Maine, his company, and other U.S. companies such as Bechtel, Halliburton, Stone, Webster, Brown, and Root through massive engineering and construction projects. Second, I would work to bankrupt the countries that received those loans after they had paid Maine and the U.S. contractors, of course, so that they would be forever beholden to their creditors, and so they would present easy targets when we needed favors, including military bases, UN votes, access to oil, and other natural resources. That's the game. Put him in hock. The way he did it was he basically, if there was a gas line project that, some energy project going on in, I don't know, Venezuela or something, no, that's not a good example, I suppose, maybe Ecuador. His job as an economist, an economic hitman, which is exactly what they called him when they were training him, was to go down there and blow out the forecast. You need 10%. Nope, write 50%, right? It justifies the loans, which of course can never be repaid. Oops, going to come in, take your stuff. Hey, give me that island. It's right in our face. It's in Greece right now, right? That's the game. Michel Chossudovsky, I can never pronounce his last name. Guy's an economist over at the University of Ottawa. Barely a few weeks after the military coup in Chile on September 11th, 1973, overthrowing the elected government of President Salvador Allende, the military junta, headed by Augusto Pinochet, ordered a hike in the price of bread from 11 to 40 escudos, a hefty overnight increase of 264%. This economic shock treatment has been designed by a group of economists called the Chicago Boys. At the time of the military coup, I was teaching at the Institute of Economics at the Catholic University of Chile, which was a nest of Chicago-trained economists, disciples of Milton Friedman. On that September 11th, in the hours following the bombing of the presidential palace at La Moneda, the new military rulers imposed a 72-hour curfew. When the university reopened several weeks later, the Chicago Boys were rejoicing. Barely a week later, several of my colleagues at the Institute of Economics were appointed to key positions in the military government. How come more people in academia aren't asking questions about this? Oops. Hey, thanks. You think he clicked on the donate button? No. Up at the top? No, this guy had a geopolitical objective. It is, you're going to go out there and you're going to sell my version of the economic model, globalization. And while you're at it, you're going to take my name out of the history books. Thank you very much. That's what $100 million buys you. Everybody says differently. He's living in fantasy land. Rockefeller founded the University of Chicago. There's that lovely royal heraldry with a big eagle on it. What were we talking about before? Money, power, right? Nazis, America, Rome, the empires. What's that heraldry all about? What's he really trying to say with that symbol? All right, I'm going to read this. Don't try to look at that. It's probably kind of small. But Senator Louis T. McFadden, Chairman, House Banking Committee, Friday, June 10th, 1932. Mr. Chairman, we have in this country one of the most corrupt institutions the world has ever known. I refer to the Federal Reserve Board and the Federal Reserve Banks. The Federal Reserve Board, a government board, has cheated the government of the United States and the people of the United States out of enough money to pay the national debt. The depredations and iniquities of the Federal Reserve Board and the Federal Reserve Banks acting together have cost this country enough money to pay the national debt several times over. This evil institution has impoverished and ruined the people of the United States, has bankrupted itself, and has practically bankrupted our government. It has done this through defects of the law under which it operates, through misadministration of that law by the Federal Reserve Board, and through the corrupt practices of the moneyed vultures who control it. Some people think that the Federal Reserve banks are U.S. government institutions. They are not government institutions. They are private credit monopolies, which prey upon the people of the United States for the benefit of themselves and their foreign customers, foreign and domestic speculators, swindlers, and rich and predatory moneylenders. In that dark crew of financial pirates, there are those who would cut a man's throat to get a dollar out of his pocket. The 12 private credit monopolies were deceitfully and disloyally foisted upon this country by bankers who came here from Europe and who repaid our hospitality by undermining our American institutions. This situation is well documented. These bankers took money of this country to finance a war against Russia. They created a reign of terror in Russia with our money. They financed Trotsky's mass meetings of discontent and rebellion in New York. They paid Trotsky's passage from New York to Russia so that he might assist in the destruction of the Russian Empire. They fomented and instigated the Russian Revolution and placed a large fund of American dollars at Trotsky's disposal in one of their banks in Sweden. It has been said that Wilson was deceived by attentions of these bankers and by the philanthropic poses they assumed. It has been said that when he discovered the manner in which he had been misled by Colonel House, Mandel House, he turned against this busybody, this holy monk of the financial empire, and showed him the door. He had the grace to do that. In my opinion, he deserves great credit for it. In 1912, the National Monetary Association, under the chairmanship of the late Senator Nelson Aldrich, he's the grandfather of Nelson Rockefeller, maternal, made a report and presented a vicious bill called the National Reserve Association Bill. This bill is usually spoken of as the Aldrich Bill. He was the tool, but not the accomplice, of the European-born bankers who for nearly 20 years have been scheming to set up a central bank in this country and who in 1912 had spent and were continuing to spend vast sums of money to accomplish their purpose. Under the tutelage of those sinister Wall Street figures who stood behind Colonel House, established here in our free country the worm-eaten monarchical institution of the King's Bank to control us from top downward and to shackle us from the cradle to the grave. The Federal Reserve has destroyed our old and characteristic way of doing business. It fastened down upon the country the very tyranny from which the framers of the Constitution sought to save us. The danger that the country was warned against came upon us and is shown in the long train of horrors attended upon the affairs of the traitorous and dishonest Federal Reserve Board and the Federal Reserve banks. The Aldrich Bill was created by bankers of European origin in New York City. It was a copy and, in general, a translation of the Reichsbank and other European central banks. 3 attempts on his life, assassinated on the 3rd one. Just a coincidence? Here's another one. The notional value of derivative financial instruments is now estimated at $1.2 quadrillion. That is $1,200 trillion. Rich, you getting all this? I am. All right. The statistic is fantastic in every sense of the word, amounting to 16 times the gross world product, which is the value of all the goods and services produced per year by every man, woman, and child on the planet, 71.83 trillion. Derivatives are valued at 6 times more than the total accumulated wealth of the world, including all global stock markets, insurance funds, and family wealth, 200 trillion. Glenn Ford goes on to say the casino has swallowed the system. The sums the players are now betting are not only far larger than the value of the rest of their portfolios, but 6 times larger than the combined assets of every human institution and family on Earth, and almost 17 times bigger than the worth of humankind's yearly output. Even if the whole planet were offered as collateral, it could not cover Wall Street bets. Why don't I just go up there and start doing that? Because that makes more sense. It's total bullshit. Alfred Owen Crozier seemed to have encapsulated it pretty nicely with this cartoon. Sorry, I might know it. 1912. So they were debating this in debating. And what a scam that debate was. What a false debate that debate was. There was the Aldrich Bill and the Federal Reserve Bill, and a couple of the presidents and a couple of the senators are going around saying, oh, the Aldrich Bill is evil. Oh, look at it. It's going to create a central bank, and it's going to put power in the hands of the money vultures. They wrote the Federal Reserve Bill. It's almost the same thing as the Aldrich Bill. What you need is the Federal Reserve Bill. See? Federal, Reserve, total misdirection. It's just, this is chess, not checkers. Who owns the World Trade Center? This is great, this one. This is from also Michel Chossudovsky's book. Sorry, Michel. The financial interest behind the World Trade Center lease from his book, America's War on Terrorism, which he cranked out within a year after 9/11. October 17, Blackstone Real Estate Advisors purchased from Teachers Insurance the participating mortgage secured by World Trade 7. April 26, 2001, the Port Authority leased the World Trade Center for 99 years to Silverstein Properties in Westfield, America, who runs the Trumbull Mall. Transaction was authorized by Port Authority Chairman Louis M. Eisenberg, and in a press release, they called it the richest real estate prize in New York City history. July 24, 2001, Silverstein officially took control of the lease. Explicitly included in the agreement was that Silverstein and Westfield were given the right to rebuild the structures if they were destroyed. There's the contract details. I won't go through all that stuff. It's a very large thing. The down payment was like $100 million, which is really interesting. In the wake of the attack, Silverstein sued for $7.1 billion in insurance money, double the amount of the value of the lease. He didn't end up getting all that, but he came close. Silverstein Properties, Inc. is a Manhattan-based real estate development and investment firm that owns, manages, and has developed more than 20 million square feet of office and residential and retail space. Westfield America, Inc. is controlled by the Australian-based Lowy family with major interest in shopping centers. Sorry, it's where I mentioned the Trumbull Mall in Connecticut. CEO is Frank Lowy. We're going to name names. If anybody want names, here you go. The Blackstone Group, a private investment bank with offices in New York and London, was founded in '85 by Chairman Peter G. Peterson and its president and CEO, Stephen A. Schwartzman. In addition to its real estate activity, the core business includes merger and acquisition, merger and acquisition advisory, restructuring and reorganizing activity, private equity investing, private mezzanine investing, liquid alternative asset investing. Peterson, at the time of writing, was chairman of the Federal Reserve Bank in New York and chairman of the board of Council on Foreign Relations. Schwartzman is a member of the CFR. Peterson is also named to widow Ellen Mariani's civil RICO suit filed against George W. Bush et al. Kissinger McClarty Associates, Henry Kissinger's consulting firm, has a strategic alliance with the Blackstone Group, which is designed to help provide financial advisory services to corporations seeking high-level strategic advice, everything done in the public domain. Not difficult, by the way, to verify any of these statements. Here's Pete. Pete Peterson. You want names? There's one. Pete. Hey, Pete. I'm in your head, dog. Here's his resume. Check it out. Secretary of Commerce. Hey. Head Kuhn Loeb Bank. Ooh, look, Peter Schiff's bank, the same people who financed Trotsky. Chairman, Federal Reserve Bank in New York, chairman of the board, Council on Foreign Relations, founder and CEO, Blackstone Group. Must have been a real hard worker. Probably went to a state school. Beverly Eckert. This woman met with the president in early February '09. This quote is referring to the Project for a New American Century document. It was written basically by the neocons in the year 2000, requiring or suggesting that if only we had a Pearl Harbor, we could attack all the countries which we've now hence attacked. Right? A lot of you guys already know this, but for the record, I think the most sinister thing that I ever read was the PNAC, the Project for a New American Century, and the fact that they alluded to the need in some way for a Pearl Harbor event to happen before the American public would be mobilized in supporting some of their agenda. It's a very frightening thing to say and to hear and to know that these people who are in the current administration, I think that it's something that they need to explain. I think everybody who participated in that at a high level in PNAC needs to be called by their commission and asked to explain their line of thinking and their expectations, given the suggestion that this would be a good thing. This would be a good thing. So about 2 weeks after that picture was taken, she dies in Buffalo Flight 3407, which crashes. So her husband was killed on 9/11. Dr. Jose Delgado. This is someone who you really want whispering sweet nothings in your ears in the evenings, ladies. Operated at Yale, New Haven for 20 years, from 1950 to 1970. Sorry, not Yale, New Haven, Yale University. The new knowledge is so important that I think it should radically change the philosophy of our educational system, which believes in the sanctity of individuals. Thinking that an individual exists at birth, this belief is not true. And this science is going to prove the fallacy of democracy in the sense that we talk about the rights of the individual. The democratic belief is not true because we are forming this individual, because we are constructing his brain. We are willy-nilly making differences we either desire or dislike. Delgado in a research paper quoted by the great Jim Keith. Everybody check out the book Mass Control. Excellent book. So he's financed by the Office of Naval Intelligence. The paper I believe that is being referenced here is Physical Control of the Mind Towards a Psycho-Civilized Society. He designed various magnetic frequency-based, somehow DNA-based mind control entrainment technology, or at least theorized about it in the 1950s. I think that they had plenty of advanced technology for that back then. So, is this relevant? What do you think, Rich? Relevant?
I do.
Sweet. Thanks, man. Seems like a nice guy to me, man. You know, he's got a big smile on his face, sitting on somebody's futon. And then we have this interesting little event in Boston. Was it a practice run for what they've got planned for martial law? I don't know. I can tell you one thing. I was going to play the video of them going door to door in the sections where they were chasing that Tazareniev kid with his evil kitchen bomb. And, you know, they're going door to door, pulling people out. There are no warrants. No warrants. There's a de facto martial law in that area. Shut Boston down over a bunch of, you know, innuendos and insinuations and conjecture. We have no proof of anything. This guy tries to take a picture of it, and this bonehead child sticking a gun in his face. Okay, I'm going to get going and wrap this thing up. Wall Street builds the Nazi cartels. IG Farben, and VS stands for something like Vereinigt Stillwerk. I can't pronounce it right. To make a long story short, read Sutton. All right, this is quoted from Wall Street and the Rise of Hitler. Between 1924 and 31, under the Dawes Plan and Young Plan, Germany paid out to the Allies about 36 million marks in reparations. At the same time, Germany borrowed abroad, mainly in the U.S., about 33 billion marks, thus making a net German payout of only 3 billion marks for reparations. Consequently, the burden of German monetary reparations to the Allies was actually carried by foreign subscribers to German bonds issued by Wall Street financial houses, at significant profit to themselves, of course. And let it be noted, these firms were owned by the same financiers who periodically took off their banker hats and donned new ones to become statesmen. As statesmen, they formulated the Dawes and Young plans to solve the problem of reparations. As Quigley points out, quote, "It is worthy of note that this system was set up by the international bankers and that the subsequent lending of other people's money to Germany was very profitable to these bankers, and it created the cartel system which rearmed Germany." Those are the facts, public domain. Rich, am I right? You've studied this.
It created a bunch of multinational companies, so no matter who wanted more, they could still survive.
Yeah. And in my view, they had a geostrategic plan for Europe that goes from World War II, smash the place, to the Marshall Plan, to the European Economic Community, to the European Union, to the mess that we have today. All consolidation. That's the way these guys are thinking. Well, here's the director of American IG. Just a little coincidence, Paul M. Warburg, Federal Reserve Bank of New York. There he is, Bank of Manhattan, Paul M. Warburg. This is the American side of the IG Farben cartel board. On the other side was the German IG board, which just happened to have Max Warburg on it, his brother, the only German national who, after World War II, was not prosecuted at Nuremberg. They just kind of let him go. Go ahead, Max. Go ahead, here's the door. Have fun. Paul comes to America in 1907 to start the process of creating the Federal Reserve System. He's the architect of it, foreign national, right? Right around that time in 1907, J.P. Morgan just happens to cause a panic, which is difficult to fully prove, but he did it. So Warburg now gets everybody nervous. Morgan gets everybody nervous. They push through this bill. He's financed to the hilt. Aldrich is taking them all over the country. They're spending all kinds of money. Then he ends up 20 years later or so on the board of the cartel that just happens to rearm the Nazis. Awesome. That's great. So not to make everybody depressed, but, you know, be advised. You know, this is not a game. You know, this is Rosa Corey in her book Behind the Green Mask on UN Agenda 21. I'm sure you've all heard of it, but let's check out her quote. And again, you've got to study this for yourself. Don't believe me, don't believe her. Quote, "In a nutshell, the plan calls for governments to take control of all land use and not leave any of the decision-making in the hands of property owners. It is assumed that people are not good stewards of their land and the governments will do a better job if it is in control. Individual rights in general are to give way to the needs of communities as determined by a globalist governing body. Moreover, people should be rounded up off the land and packed into human settlements, or islands of human habitation as they are called in the UN Agenda 21 documents." close to the employment centers and transportation. Signed by our good buddy, George Bush Sr. in 1992 at the UN Earth Summit in Rio. It was not ratified by Congress. I think they call it a soft sort of law. They're implementing it. Every time you see sustainability in green at the municipal level, at the local town level, that's the backbone, UN Agenda 21. That is the backbone that's verifiable. It's time to start looking at this stuff. All right. Of course, they're so worried about the environment. Has anybody heard a word about Fukushima in the last 2.5 years? No. Right. All right, my main man, Mark Passio. He's going to rock it out, old school, for the next, what is it, 24 hours, Mark, you're going to go? None of you are allowed to leave, by the way. There are no bathroom breaks. I lied. You're going to be stuck here. Oh, yeah, you know what? I'll go through the agenda real quick. I mean, so Mark's going to jump up here in about 1 minute, run until 12. You guys can all go take a lunch break. Plenty of places to go, and we can probably help out with some recommendations, but there's a lot of nice Italian food in New Haven. And it's a college town, so there's bars everywhere. I mean, you're not going to have much trouble. So we'll come back here for about 1:15. Mark will kick it back up to 5. Of course, there'll be breaks. And then from 5 to 6:15, there'll be a dinner break. And then for those of you who'd like to come back, we'll do a closing section, a little Q&A. I guess, that'll wrap it up. I think we're going to end between 8 and 9. Probably closer to 8, but let's see how it goes. Anyway, Mark, you're going to hear enough from him today, so I'm not going to say much more about him. Great guy. I had dinner with him last night. Lots of fun. And, you all know his work, at least somewhat. Michael Tazarian. This man is an animal. Animal. Mark, as brilliant as he is, it's like, even bigger. Even Mark will tell you, the guy's an animal. If you want to understand the most important questions that he'll help you answer, basically, are this. The psychological root of the war on consciousness and what it is about us. Psychological background. What it is about us that creates this relationship between master and slave, and why it is that we seem to need it and create it on our own. That's what Michael Tazarian's all about. If anybody here, how many people here know Michael's work? Okay, so about half of you haven't. All right, cool. So the other half can jump in on that. Go to his website. He's got like 400,000 hours of stuff that you can parse through. So it'll require an attention span, but he's also got some nice short 1-hour presentations on YouTube, so check him out. All right. Thank you very much. While the former may be qualified to solve the riddle of their own destiny, the latter must be led like a flock of sheep and taught in simple language. They depend almost entirely upon the ministrations of the shepherd. The Apostle Paul said that these little ones must be fed with milk, but that meat is the food of strong men. Thoughtlessness is synonymous with childishness, while thoughtfulness is symbolic of maturity. So, are we thinking these days? Because you have a PhD, are you thinking? What's going on around you? What's the thought process behind this? Let's keep going. There are, however, but few mature minds in the world, and thus it was that the philosophic religious doctrines of the pagans were divided to meet the needs of the two fundamental groups of human intellect, one philosophic, the other incapable of appreciating the deeper mysteries of life. To the discerning few were revealed the esoteric or spiritual teachings, while the unqualified many received only the literal or exoteric interpretations. In order to make simple the great truths of nature and the abstract principles of natural law, the vital forces of the universe were personified, becoming the gods and goddesses of the ancient myths, while the ignorant multitudes brought their offerings to the altar of Priapus and Pan, deities representing the procreative energies. The wise recognized in these marble statues only symbolic concretions of great abstract truths. So it seems to be that the prevailing thought process among the Freemasons is that there's going to be an initiated or a high priest class, and then there's going to be everybody else. And I think the question is, what do they know and what could they share with us? And bearing also in mind that this is a concept that goes back, like, as you can tell by the use of language here, thousands of years. So you've got the Bacchic tradition. Give me a couple more, Mark. The Druids. They've all got this structure where you've got the masses, then you've got the initiate, and then you've got the chance to get up to the highest level. But ultimately, that's a pyramid structure, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, it doesn't mean it's evil either. Could be good or bad. Matter of fact, under the right circumstances, if there's a big recap on how life's going out there. So I have a little screen here to start it off, pattern recognition. It's a focal point of the work of guys like Mark and Michael Tazarian, and obviously a big part of that is left brain, right brain balance, and Mark's gonna get into all that today. But I found a picture that I thought was kind of interesting. There's our lovely friends at the Federal Reserve with that lovely building, that wonderful warm building that really makes you want to come in and give people hugs, doesn't it? Look at that.
Yeah, right.
And then on the right, we have the new Reichschancellery in 1939, both of which feature eagles and podiums that look extraordinarily similar. I think we're going to be making some more connections between Nazis and America today before we're done. So hold on to your hat. Gary, hold on to your hat. All right. And by the way, the eagle is the sign of Scorpio, at least according to Michael Tazarian, which rules money and power. And, we get a lot of that between Rome and the Vatican and the Nazis and in the United States. That's a key piece of heraldry. We're all used to seeing that eagle, aren't we? But we need to see it. All right. Hey, everybody. Thanks for coming. I'm Art Capozzis. I'm sort of volunteered to help Mark out to kind of come on up to Connecticut and have some fun with you all today. We have lovely fluoride-laced water provided by the management back there, if you guys get thirsty. So I'm going to be pretty quick. You all already know this stuff for the most part. This is just like a little current events. Hey, why are we here? Kind of within the right context and within an open mind. Don't bite down too hard on anything I have to say. Certainly don't just believe a word I say. Hopefully you guys can take some time and do some research into things. And obviously, if you're already here, then you're probably already doing that. But anyway, thanks again for coming. So Manly P. Hall, somebody that a lot of you are probably familiar with, wrote a book called The Secret Teachings of All Ages. And I think he kind of summed up a lot of the reason why we're here today in the first two paragraphs in great part. This is a really long book. This thing is, I don't know, Mark, what do you think? It's like 500 pages or 400 pages. And it goes through basically the Freemasonic belief system, and this guy, Manly, is a great scholar and somebody who's written a lot about that knowledge base or that belief system. So I'm going to read this for you, so don't worry about trying to do it yourself. When confronted with a problem involving the use of reasoning faculties, individuals of strong intellect keep their poise and seek to reach a solution by obtaining facts bearing upon the question. Those of immature mentality, on the other hand, when similarly confronted, are overwhelmed